All right. Welcome to this Titan Professional webinar, The Hidden Profit in RV Draft Repairs. I appreciate everybody joining this short webinar. I don't imagine we'll be on here for more than 30 minutes. I appreciate you taking the time, and let's see, let's get into it here. During this webinar, we'll be looking at basically, so it's a Titan webinar, so we'll look at who Titan is. We'll look at underbody air sealing in RVs, air leakage, and kind of how you can turn these complaints into a business opportunity. And then how you can treat air sealing like a system for any shops that may be unfamiliar with this practice. So just to give you a little context, Titan Professional is a single source manufacturer of sealants and adhesives. We manufacture these foam sealants, foam adhesives. One is used by RV companies and a couple other, then we make products for other trades related to construction and other types of air sealing, basically for residential construction. But you can apply this technology and practice to RV manufacturing and repair as well. And so that's kind of what we're looking at today. So we'll get right into it. Basically, why underbody air sealing is one of the most overlooked opportunities in RV manufacturing and MRO. So if you walk into any, if you think about it, if you walk into any RV service bay during the height of the winter or summer months, you'll hear kind of a familiar complaint, basically that the floors are freezing or there's some sort of draft that they can't find, or that it just doesn't feel sealed. You know, it feels drafty, let's say. For many of the RV manufacturers and MRO shops, you know, these are issues that are sometimes just dismissed or treated as they're unavoidable. You know, it's just a part of having an RV, you know, perhaps. But really the root cause is just uncontrolled air leakage. Basically, air is leaking out or leaking in to the RV. And so this is sort of what you're facing anywhere there's a penetration. And we'll look into all that here during this webinar. And so this webinar is basically intended for any shops or any technicians that want to turn this challenge into a profitable service opportunity. So it's another kind of add-on service or a way you can help RV customers. So the real problem is air leakage. And here on this slide, we'll look at some statistics. You can see kind of at the bottom right, some logos. A lot of this comes from the U.S. Department of Energy, Energy Star, Building Science Corporation. This is where I get a lot of this information. So basically, air movement is a major factor in comfort and energy loss. You know, you're kind of looking at a twofold problem where you either have an uncomfortable customer or a customer that's losing energy. And again, a lot of our materials go into homes, and so that's where a lot of this research is. But you can apply this concept to RVs and maybe make something positive out of that. Basically, 25 to 40% of your heating and cooling energy can be lost due to air leakage. And so that's kind of a pretty general statistic there, 25 to 40%. Probably with RVs, it's higher because they're pretty leaky. And then by air leakage, I mean when outside air enters and conditioned air escapes. So you're conditioning the RV to be at some temperature, whether it's in the winter or summer, maybe you're trying to make it hotter or colder, and you've got some air leakage. So just to be kind of specific. And so air leakage can result in a third of your total energy loss, which is pretty shocking. A lot of that air can leak out, especially, and so that's just statistics around homes. So if you consider RVs experience constant vibration, these obviously typical residential homes don't experience this, hopefully. But constant vibration, extreme temperature swings, you can consider, they're stored outside typically, and maybe just in the open sun. Multiple material transitions from the siding to the roof to the plastic barrier around the AC unit, or from whatever the material the underside is, it varies, and the electrical cords and plumbing equipment that's PVC maybe. So you can think that there's a lot of different materials that maybe aren't so compatible with each other, and that can cause a leak, an air leak. And then obviously I mentioned the penetrations for plumbing, wiring, and mechanical systems. And we'll look at some pictures of all this here in the upcoming slides. But basically each of these create an ideal condition for uncontrolled air pathways. And so our goal is to control them, right? When we're air sealing, we want to take the uncontrolled air pathways and control them and funnel all that into our heating or cooling or whichever one we're doing. And so ultimately, the discomfort is the big part. That's what they're complaining about, like I mentioned in the previous slide. But the discomfort plus energy loss equals just an unhappy RV owner. And so we're trying to prevent the air leakage. So where do RVs actually leak air? This is part of what I was just looking at. And I made that picture there for the slide. You can see storage compartments, slide outs, underbelly coverings, plumbing, penetrations through the floor. So air leakage occurs when there are pressure differences. So that could be caused by wind, temperature, and mechanical systems, and those push through the gaps or openings. So again, logically, hopefully you're tracking with what I'm saying here, but you have that AC unit on and it's blowing air, pulling air from the outside and blowing it into the RV, and then that air is just blowing out the holes or penetrations, or vice versa, or there's wind. So you can see how that could cause air leakage. The most common leakage points, like I already mentioned, are those penetrations through the floor, gaps in the underbelly coverings, and frame to floor transitions, storage compartments and slide outs, factory cutouts that were never fully sealed. Pretty common spots. And here's a picture I included. You can see I put a yellow circle around it there, where you can see this is an RV, and you can see there's a pipe penetration coming out the bottom. That's some sort of, I'm not sure what that is, some sort of plumbing pipe perhaps. And you can see that they've got a foam sealant around it, which is what my recommendation is going to be. But you can see how that would be just a leak if it wasn't sealed. So it's very common, and there's maybe a dozen or more of these on every RV. And so these are system realities of RV construction and repair. This isn't necessarily a defect. This is part of the intended use of an RV. You want it to be a mobile, you want it to be totally mobile and sort of an independent unit for people to use. And so you want there to be plumbing and electrical, but we've got a seal around those. So it's just kind of a part of it, I guess. So every draft complaint represents a problem for the customer, right? So this is something they're coming to you to resolve, or maybe they just kind of complain about it. And so for you, it represents, something that's solvable, and you could actually make money on this. The material cost is low. The required labor time is short. Like just that sealing right there would take 5 seconds, maybe. 4 seconds you're talking about it, the 1 second you're doing it. The required labor time is short, like I just said. The results are immediate, noticeable, and then they're happy about it. So they're comfortable now. So people could feel this when they step into their RV, that it's actually sealed, especially when it's hot or cold outside, they can tell. And so ultimately you want to shift over to treating air sealing like a system. And here's another picture you can see of some wires coming out of the underbelly of this RV. But you want to treat it like a repeatable system that you can standardize and actually practice in your business. And so the most effective shops treat it like a process. And so this is commonplace. Again, the majority of people using Titan in the world are insulation in the US, are insulation contractors. But for RV shops, you can apply this framework to your RV repair process. So you can inspect it is probably the first step, focusing on the penetrations and seams and kind of getting a look around, inspecting it, seeing if you can shine a flashlight through there and see if you see, or you can, see if you see daylight through the hole. So you're sort of inspecting it, all the transitions, seeing if there's some sort of seal there or not. And then you can use a material like our RV and Automotive black insulating foam that expands to fill those gaps. So if you use some traditional caulk sealant, it might not seal it all the way. You need to use something that'll actually expand to fill the gaps in an irregular way. And then you want to verify it, and this can be feel or visual, and then there's actual mechanical test methods. I reference one at the very end. I have a sources slide at the end I'll show you, and there's a mechanical test. In homes, they do something or in houses, they do something called the blower door test, where they actually have a fan that blows in and they measure the resistance to kind of get a sense of the envelope. So that's something you can do with an RV as well. Obviously, you can just seal them up and kind of get a sense afterwards of how well it's done. And then you want to train your techs to build it into your workflow or your service package. So why foam sealants are the preferred solution? So traditional sealants often require perfect application conditions and struggle with irregular gaps. So that's something I was mentioning a second ago. A lot of traditional sealants are solvent-based as well, so you'll get some shrinkage with the sealants, and so you'll seal it up, and then some gaps will appear kind of the next day or so, and it just won't be as good of a seal as you were hoping. And so the foam sealants, you're not so worried about that. They expand to fill the voids of varying shapes and sizes. It comes out like a foam and it just expands out. It creates that air barrier, which is critical. That's basically just what we're talking about, an air barrier. And it provides both sealing and insulating benefits. Our polyurethane foam sealant actually has an R value. And so it's in addition to blocking the air, it actually blocks the heat and cold from penetrating your RV. And so the Department of Energy actually recommends low expansion spray foam, which is what this is, for sealing gaps around penetrations and joints. And for RV applications where gaps are inconsistent and access is limited, foam becomes the most effective solution available. And you shake up the can and apply it. It's not that complicated, and there's a gun applicator. So basically, our RV and Automotive is built for this job. So RVs and the materials they're built with experience some tough conditions, like we talked about earlier, the movement, the vibration, the temperature fluctuations, and they're kind of exposed to the elements, obviously. So our black insulating foam sealant is designed specifically for these conditions. There's strong adhesion. It withstands vibrations. It's controlled expansion. It won't overexpand. That can be an issue with electrical components. If you try a high expansion foam, it can actually break the electrical components, which isn't good. It withstands the vibrations. It's used on RVs across the country, and because obviously they're vibrating when they're moving down the road. And you get some precision with that gun applicator. You can dial it in and apply it wherever you need. So what my recommendation is that you add air sealing to your inspection. Like when it comes into your shop, you can add that in and you can identify, okay, yeah, we've got 4 gaps that need to be sealed. And then you can actually package that, hey, we've got a draft, a comfort sealing or draft reduction term. This is something we see kind of shops using. And then you want to train your techs to standardize that process and, you know, get them familiar with it. And then you can demonstrate that value. You can use one of those mechanical tools that I referenced earlier. And so this is a picture of our Arvionado black foam, but it's black in color. It blends in with the undercarriage. It is resistant to water and oil, and it withstands the vibrations, like I mentioned. So thank you for watching the webinar. That's about it. So we've got a Instagram, Facebook, YouTube page. You know, check that out. If you're interested in other videos, you can go to our Titan website and learn more. There's a where to buy button on the Titan website. So it's titan.com/US for our Arvionado black foam. And again, here's a picture of it. The label is also black. But again, we're a single source manufacturer of foam sealants and adhesives. So I appreciate you watching the webinar. And oh yeah, here's the sources that I mentioned. So that SealTech leak testing method, that's a kind of a leak test that you could look into. This is something, a machine that does that testing I described. But of course, there's some other, this is where I got a lot of the statistics that I mentioned earlier. So like I said, I appreciate you joining the webinar. I appreciate your time, and stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.